Welcome to Green Dot Daily. I'm Maria Marino, live every weekday at 3 Eastern on the Action app. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. Later in the show, we'll talk baseball and get a pick from Anthony Dabbundo. But first, more importantly, it's draft day, and our own Sean Koerner will join us to break down his latest mock. Before we do that, though, here's a look at the action coming in on players to be picked in the top 5. Over 90% of money is on Caleb Williams to be drafted first overall. At number 2, Jaden Daniels has garnered over 62% of money. Almost 53% of money is on Drake May to go number 3, about 35% of money on Marvin Harrison Jr. to go 4th, and about 33% on Joe Alt to be the number 5 pick. So let's welcome in the guys from the Favorites podcast. We miss you here on Green Dot Daily, Chad Millman and Simon Hunter. I know you guys couldn't be more excited. Let's start with this. The QB you are most intrigued by and where they should go. Chad, we'll start with you.
Oh, Michael Penix Jr., without a doubt. I love the guy. I went to Indiana. I followed him at Indiana. I followed him at Washington. He can throw a dart. He can throw deep. He can throw with accuracy. I think he has one of the 2 best balls in the draft coming out, other than Caleb Williams. The movement on Michael Penix Jr. In his odds to go in the first round, he's moved from about minus 350 to be out of the first round I'm sorry, he went from plus money to be out of the first round. Now he's at minus money to be in the first round. Most fascinating. I think he could go anywhere from top 10 to second day. So I want to see what that story ends up like.
Yeah, certainly some debate as to whether or not he will go in the first round. But Simon, what about you?
Yeah, excited to see where JJ McCarthy goes. He's definitely a player that in his life, he's done a lot of winning, and he's always been a high-graded player. Like, even out of high school, he was great as the number 1 quarterback in his class. And then he goes to college, obviously wins a national championship and has back-to-back winning seasons. It's pretty rare you have a guy that has won 63 games and lost only 3 between high school and college. So a lot of scouts love him and the idea of him. And we've seen that with this draft process where he was supposed to be a late mid-round, maybe first-round pick, and now people are talking about him being a top 5 pick, and it's just because he could easily be peaked. This could be the best, as good as he gets, and he could easily be a backup in 2 or 3 years, or he could have that thing you can't teach and coach, which is winning. Like, he can just be a winner who can progressively just keeps getting better and better, and he has his entire career. He improved from high school to college, and Harbaugh keeps talking about how well coached he can be coached up and how coachable he is. So it's easy. So why he's such a darling. And now he falls into a situation of he's not going to the worst teams in the league, right? We don't think he's going to the Commanders, a team that has issues, the Patriots, team that has major issues. People are talking about him going to the Vikings, a team that, with Kirk Cousins at their helm, they've made the playoffs multiple seasons, and the team hasn't gotten worse. They've actually probably improved at the wide receiver position, the offensive line position. So JJ steps in there with the great offensive minds of the Vikings have right now. That could be a really nice scenario for JJ. So I'm really excited to see what his career takes place, because he could go there and excel, or JJ could shock the world and New England takes him at number 3 and he could be a complete disaster. So I'm pretty excited to see what happens with JJ's career.
Great point. And obviously we're expecting a top-heavy first round in terms of quarterbacks. But Simon, you're also betting on 6+ trades to go down in round 1. So give us the reasoning and how those 2 things correlate.
Yeah, it's all about the quarterbacks. I usually don't bet this heavy just because it is such a public bet. The public wants trades to happen. I'm with the public. It's fun. It's exciting. So usually I like to be on the other side of this. But this year, because there's so many teams trying to fight up and move up for different quarterbacks, it's going to happen. Like, there's going to be a lot of trades. And me and Chad talked about on our own show, the Favorites. If New England does trade out of the 3 spot because they do like JJ and they're okay with the team moving up to take Drake May in the 3rd pick, this might hit within the first 15 picks because so many teams will be trading up, trading back. But that's not even the reason we're making this bet. We're making this bet because if any of these quarterbacks do fall, that's another instance of teams will move up to go get those quarterbacks, and teams that have moved down now and got more picks are happy to move back up to go get a guy they did want, who's sliding in the draft because, maybe there's a run on wide receivers. You want to go get the left tackle that's dropped in the draft a little bit. So to me, this is a draft. There's going to be a lot of moving parts, especially there's so many teams out there trying to move other players. Like we've heard Ayuk is trying to be moved, and there's a lot of guys who are being moved also in free agency that involve draft pick trades. So yeah, it could be really exciting. We might know by the third or fourth pick that there could be a lot of trades in this upcoming draft.
Indeed. And Chad, another pick that you spoke about on the Favorites podcast was liking over 6.5 D linemen or edge rushers to go round one. Can you give us sort of the abridged version as to why?
I cannot give you an abridged version. This will take 35 minutes.
Well, I guess we should move on then.
Yeah, no, but look, everyone's talking about quarterbacks. Everyone's talking about receivers. It's also a very deep draft for O linemen. But in the past couple of years, defensive tackles and defensive ends, edge rushers, have become the dominant position for teams who are showing how deep they can be. Look, look at the Chiefs last year, right? The Chiefs became a team that could withstand offensive issues because their defensive line with Chris Jones in the middle was so good. We saw that with the Rams and Aaron Donald. We've seen it again. Look at the Eagles. They, in the beginning of the year, had a dominant defensive tackle tandem of Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. Obviously, Fletcher Cox. Like, teams build a foundation off of edge rushers and defensive tackles. There are 6 guys who we can expect to go in the first round. So the key pick here, I'm going to give you a name, Chop Robinson, edge rusher from Penn State. He is expected to go anywhere from early second round to late first round. His coach, one of the teams that he is expected to go to is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The coach for defensive linemen for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was recently the coach for the Cowboys, where he developed Micah Parsons, who, like Chop Robinson, was a player from Penn State. So they're making a lot of comps, and the Bucs have emerged as a team that is likely to draft Chop Robinson. So when we get to the end of the first round, let's see if we can get some Chop.
That's a great look. Okay, you guys obviously have your noted fandoms, Chad, the Bears, Simon, the Eagles. So let's end with this. Chad, you will go to bed happy if the Bears blank.
Draft Caleb Williams. I think it's impossible for me to not go to bed happy tonight because the Bears have the #1 pick. They've got what is considered to be a prospect on the level of previous can't miss prospects like Andrew Luck, like Trevor Lawrence. So the Bears have an opportunity to not make a mistake, to not overreach, to not overthink, to not get too smart. Draft the guy in front of them who can change the trajectory of their franchise. And then they got the #9 pick. And honestly, whatever they did with that, I'd be happy. The Bears have needs at receiver. There's great receiver options. It's a really deep draft for that. They have needs at offensive line. It's a really deep offensive line draft with a lot of high quality picks in the first 10. They've got opportunities to improve the defensive line, like we just discussed. Great opportunities to do that with a really deep draft. So even if they traded out of it and got more assets, I'd be happy as long as we draft Caleb Williams.
Would be kind of hard for the Bears to screw this up. Now, Simon, if
anybody can do it, Maria.
Stop. No, you're going to bed happy tonight. And Simon is going to bed happy if the Eagles blank.
Anything. Howie can't go wrong. Howie just I'm a typical Eagles fan where I hate anything we do regardless. So it's always gonna be the right pick because it's Howie making the move. So I trust Howie, but as the Eagles fan I am, I'll definitely be listening to WIP, just all the Eagles, angry Eagles fans. When we trade up, we take an offensive lineman that we don't even need. So yeah, that's just how it is in Philadelphia. But like Chad, I'm just really excited for his team. Two top 10 picks is pretty incredible. So yeah, that's pretty exciting if you're a Bears fan.
You got to be pretty bad, Simon. Get 2 top 10 picks.
Yes, you suffer to then be able to have the hope on draft day Once again, Chad Millman, Simon Hunter, we're so excited. We hope you guys enjoy tonight, and thank you for joining the show.
Bear down.
And for more on the draft, check out the recent episode of The Favorites where Johnny Manziel sat down with the guys. Not only did he talk quarterback prospects, he talked about his own NFL struggles. Take a listen to some of what he had to say.
Do you ever think about that? Do you think about the different scenarios and what might have been and how you would have managed that?
Yeah, how can you not? I mean, as you sit here today and know that your NFL career didn't work out, wouldn't it be nice to fantasize and think about going somewhere else to be able to maybe have a fresh start or something different, or if it had worked out? And I don't play that game as much with myself anymore as I used to in the past. I think that's a lot of what I've been doing for the last 8 years. But fit does matter, and where you go and a coach believing in you. Somebody has to believe in one of these guys and believe in it the way that they may not even believe in themselves. And that's where I ran into some trouble is, I had people believing in me, but when it comes down to it, if you're not doing the work yourself to get to where you need to go individually as a person, you're still going to have your struggles no matter how much belief is in that quarterback room. I think for me, I was at a place in my life where my game was struggling and I didn't have the confidence in myself on the football field that I normally had in the past. And when you lose that confidence in yourself, you start to question whether you can make that throw. And the NFL is not a place for you to drop back 5 steps and be like sitting back there going, can I make this throw? Can I really step into this and get it to where I need to be? And when your confidence is, not there and you're taking steps back in a game and you're dropping and thinking about this or thinking about that, football is not a game that you can think and play. You need to go out and have your work done, pre-prepped and pre-ready to go to where when Sundays come around, you just do. You don't think.
So late last night, our director of predictive analytics, Sean Koerner, dropped his mock draft 1.0. You can see the complete first round if you subscribe to Action Pro, but here's a sneak peek. He's got 4 quarterbacks going in the first round, including JJ McCarthy at number 5, but to the Vikings instead of the Chargers. As we welcome in the odds maker himself, Sean Koerner. I know this is an incredibly busy day for you, but it's so good to see you here on Green Dot Daily. Why don't you give us an idea of just what goes into the process of building this mock draft?
Yeah, so first off, I mean, when it comes to what I'm trying to accomplish with this, my 2 goals for the mock draft are 1, finding betting opportunities, most importantly, and 2, also submitting this and doing well in the accuracy contest. So, when it comes to making my mocks, I'm trying to put together how I think the draft will actually go, while leveraging the market itself in certain spots. However, I do not actually think it will go exactly as planned. So I view each pick as sort of, tip of the iceberg, with a lot of potential other outcomes beneath it under the water. So for every pick, I know if I get it wrong, who it might be, if there's a potential trade, and what, that would kind of correlate later in the draft. So I actually built a simulator to kind of do that for me. So later in the day, if, I start to trend thinking a guy will go somewhere, it'll kind of update everything off of that. So I'm just thinking this is like a domino effect of everything we think will, go wrong, could go wrong, and, what will result to that. So by doing that, I can kind of see where the market seems pretty inefficient.
Brilliant. So yeah, you have your plan A, but you have sort of these other potential outcomes kind of locked and loaded, ready to go. Let's start with the idea though of Minnesota trading up to get JJ McCarthy. What led you to that?
Yeah, so to be honest, this is the first guess of the draft. For a while now, the market has had the Vikings, being the most likely team to land JJ McCarthy, who have the 11th pick. But JJ McCarthy was also favored to go in the top 5. So that didn't make sense unless a team like the Vikings were to trade up inside the top 5. So I think, the Cardinals or the Chargers make a ton of sense as trading partners. Although there is, this trend right now where the Patriots could take JJ McCarthy at pick 3, which would mean Drake May is available, presumably. So you'd still see a team like the Vikings probably want to trade up in the top 4 or 5. So I'm factoring all that in. But just with the Vikings, it makes a ton of sense. You know, they moved on from Kirk Cousins. They still have one of the best receivers in the game in Justin Jefferson, as well as, you know, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson there. They can't really rely on Sam Darnold going forward. So they just make a ton of sense to be in the mix for these, you know, top 4 quarterbacks are going to be off the board. So they probably won't get it at 11. So it does make sense for them to move up to either pick 4 or 5.
All right. So you've already explained that you have expectations based on certain things happening. So if this trade actually does, you know, go down, what opportunities do you see in the market based on that?
Yeah, so there's just a ton of potential chaos and really the picks 3 through 5 range. And someone that would benefit from that, or a bet that would benefit from that, is probably Marvin Harrison Jr. To go at pick number 5 at 7-1. That's if you think the Cardinals would be the trade partner to trade down with the Vikings. And this scenario really plays out if the Patriots end up going with JJ McCarthy at pick 3, this could still bear out because Drake May would be out there presumably. So a situation like this, you know, the Chargers would have the 5th pick presumably. And if Marvin Harrison Jr. is sitting there, they might go with him. They're expected to go an offensive lineman, but again, if Marvin Harrison Jr. is there, they could take him. If the Falcons were to trade down with the Vikings, they could still trade up to pick 5, and they'd probably take Marvin Harrison Jr. there. That would probably be the plan. So just based on my model, it looks like there's some inefficiency there with Marvin Harrison being pick number 5 at plus 7-1. I have that closer to, you know, 4-1 odds for that. So that's one I do think the Cardinals are going to take Marvin Harrison at pick 4. But just based on the market and the chaos, I think he is offering some value there at 7-1.
Good to know. Now, although you have the 4 QBs going top 5, you don't have other quarterbacks currently being taken in the first round. So just what was the deciding factor there?
Yeah, that's just the initial mock, but I am trying to think of a way where, you know, the Broncos will probably trade down. And it seems like they do want to get Bo Nix. I don't know if it would make sense to really take him at pick 12. They could probably trade down later in the first round and still get him. So I think by the time I have my final mock, I think I will have, you know, a scenario with that in play. Same thing with the Raiders and with like Michael Penix Jr. I think that they could end up, you know, taking him at 13 or trading down, getting him, or these teams might risk it, wait till the second round and trade up in the second round. So as of now, I don't have trades. It's usually, you know, I don't want to like have a ton of trades in my mock initially, but I think eventually I would probably get there with, you know, the Broncos trading down and getting, you know, Bo Nix later in the first round tonight.
Fair enough. Let's talk defensive players for a moment. At number 8, you have Laiatu Latu being the first defensive lineman taken by Atlanta. He actually has the 3rd best odds to be the first defensive player taken. Would you consider betting that?
I wouldn't really go to that market. I'm just being kind of sneaky here, having him pick 8. But to be truthful, this 8 slot is almost impossible to predict right now. I would say this pick in the top 10 probably has the widest range of outcomes because it does depend on what happens with, you know, trading and JJ McCarthy and Drake May and all those things. And then who ends up being available for Atlanta. They have, you know, wide range of outcomes of what they'll actually do, which defensive edge rusher they would want to take. They might trade down. So I don't think anybody at pick 8 should be shorter than 3-1 odds. So this is a pick specifically that I don't feel comfortable with. And, you know, this is just one where I think Latu would be sneaky there. But again, this is just admittedly a pick that I think has the widest range of outcomes right now.
No, well, I'm glad that you laid that out, you know, so everyone understands. But to clarify as well, you will be updating this mock as we get closer to the draft starting. Any thoughts yet on like where you see the most potential for a change?
Yeah, it's really just the quarterbacks, right? So there's been some steam on, you know, McCarthy potentially going to the Patriots with the 3rd pick. So if I do go that route, I'll update my mock, and then again, my simulator will kind of guide me to, you know, where to go after that. But I think it's really just where McCarthy lands, if the Vikings trade up, and, you know, what happens from there. And then again, with Bo Nix and the Broncos, how they handle that if they want to trade down. Other than that, I kind of have it set up where, the other teams outside that aren't really going after quarterback, they'll just take the best player available that they need within their position needs. But I think really the quarterbacks in the first 4 picks or 5 picks will probably dictate how my top 10 goes. And then from there, it's still a wide range of outcomes, but I think it's going to be a little bit easier to project.
Do you feel comfortable giving out a pick at this point?
Oh, yeah. I might as well throw out this one. I think this one's offering pretty good value, but I think Cooper DeJean, his draft position under 23.5 at even money is offering value right now because, he's expected to be the 3rd cornerback off the board, but there's still a slight chance he ends up being, the 1st or 2nd cornerback off the board. Plus, there's a handful of teams that could take a cornerback before the 24th pick, the Colts, Jaguars, Eagles, even the Seahawks or the Falcons are in play as well. So I think the fact that the Eagles are minus 110 to take a corner, they have the 22nd pick. I like them being included in this batch. So I like him at 23.5, under 23.5. And he's not really impacted negatively by all these potential trades. If anything, somebody might trade up to get a cornerback like him in this range anyway. So I think there's a lot of potential outs for Cooper DeJean to get drafted under 23.5 here.
Well, Sean Koerner, we so appreciate you sharing all of your insights with us on this busy day. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And be sure once again to visit the Action app or the website to see the rest of Sean's first round mock. Pay attention. He's going to update that closer to draft time. Now to baseball. Check out these comparisons between opening day and current win totals. The White Sox are tracking to finish even worse than their opening day total of 63.5. Astros also looking a bit worse off than their opening day total of 93.5. Royals are right on pace with what their win total was a month ago, while the Orioles are tracking a bit better, going from 89.5 to 91.5. As we bring in our MLB expert, Anthony Dabbundo, we'll get your pick for tonight in a few. But first, we're 4 weeks into the season. We want to know your 4 biggest takeaways so far. So where would you like to start?
Thanks for having me, Maria. Fun day across the diamond. We've got a ton of baseball action throughout the day, and we've got a couple games that are on the verge of going final. And the White Sox are 3-21, headed toward 3-22. I think the biggest takeaway is that the bottom teams are much worse than normal. We've got Miami at 6-20, Colorado at 6-19, the White Sox 3-21. Second worst start in 50 years of baseball. Only the Orioles in 98 were worse. So, you look at some of these historical comparisons, the White Sox, the market still hasn't caught up, I think, to how bad some of these really bad teams are. And one of the truisms of betting baseball day to day throughout the year is that there tends to be the most value in betting the worst teams, because even the worst teams usually win 60 to 65 games. But this time, I really don't think that's the case with just how bad this White Sox team is. Their bullpen, their lineup missing their best hitter in Luis Robert. It is truly a tough task to get me to back the White Sox in any capacity, even with these numbers starting to finally this week get to a point where I'm even showing value on the White Sox. So no value in backing them for me. And I think that you have to just kind of understand that the worst teams in the league are worse than normal at this point in the season.
Right. And the next worst team in the majors after the 3 you mentioned is Houston. What do you make of them?
I mean, it's getting to the point now where you can't just say it's a slow start, because the math they have to overcome to even make the playoffs starts to get really dicey. Because if you look at the American League this year with how good the American League East is, I think you're going to need 89, 90 wins, which means they would need to play at a 97 win pace the rest of the season to get to 90 wins. They're leading the Cubs right now, but only the Rockies have allowed more runs this season. They play at altitude. So of teams that play at, sea level or close to sea level, they've been the worst pitching staff in baseball. And there's not really like a clear answer to how they solve those problems. I mean, I don't expect the bullpen at the back end to be as bad as it's been. Josh Hader, Brian Abreu, Ryan Presley, 3 top end relievers. Their bullpen depth has not been good. And you're seeing these starting pitcher injuries with Framber Valdez going down, Justin Verlander making his second start of the season today as we speak. He's been a little up and down in rehab and thus far himself. Christian Javier just landed on the injured list. Hunter Brown was a guy they were expecting to take a leap or have a little bit of a breakout. He's gone the other direction. His fastball looks worse. He's had multiple starts where he can barely get out of the first or second inning this season. So the thing about the Astros, they've had this incredible run where they've been in the ALCS every year since 2017. But at what point does the front office start to transition and say, hey, we need to start thinking about the future? Because it's not that far away where somebody like Alex Bregman, whose contract is up at the end of the year, or Framber Valdez, they could be moved. If the Astros don't want to invest in them long-term and they want to kind of turn over this roster a little bit as they age out of the aging core, they could make moves for the future and ultimately become sellers. I mean, it wouldn't even be that shocking if they traded Verlander with his contract the way it is set up as well to a contender. So if they don't start to turn this around in the next month, then the math gets really hard in this American League, where you saw the 88-win Mariners last year not even make the playoffs. So it's very tough to see Houston turning this around.
Right. And the Astros already a worse record than, say, Oakland, which is just surprising to see. But if they keep trending this direction, to your point, it feels like they would have to become sellers by the deadline. What else you got?
So I think the Kansas City Royals are a really interesting team. You talked about it in the open when you said that, their win total is pretty comparable to what it was at the beginning of the season. Well, what have we learned since then? Cole Ragans has started and looked like a Cy Young contender, which a lot of hype coming into him after he had a dominant second half last year. Could Ragans stay healthy? There's been a ton of pitcher injuries. Right now, Cole Ragans is healthy and pitching at a Cy level. Bobby Witt, he signed a huge long-term extension to stay in Kansas City in the offseason. He's taken a huge leap forward. He's now the second betting favorite to win the American League MVP after Juan Soto. So they have an MVP contender, a Cy Young contender, and I think the most underrated moves they made in the offseason were getting Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha as kind of middle of the rotation guys who don't have a ton of upside but have a pretty high floor. Combine that with Brady Singer, it's a rotation that's been one of the better ones in the American League. They still have bullpen problems, and that can be addressed if they want to push some chips in at the deadline. But what I'm encouraged by, too, is this offense. Their offense is fourth in expected weighted on base average, second in barrel rate. So they hit the ball really hard. They put the ball in the air. They hit for power. They're scoring a lot of runs. And Reagan's right now dealing just through 5 innings, a 1-run ball against Toronto. So you're looking at this Kansas City team in a division that is now wide open with Minnesota struggling. Cleveland lost their ace in Shane Bieber. They are the best team right now in the division, but Kansas City is still priced at 5-1. I think that's the best bet on the board you can make if you're not invested in the AL Central to win that division. I think they're certainly live as we get into the summer.
Yeah, great price at plus 500 for the Royals, currently second in the division behind said Guardians. All right, one more for you. What is it?
We're going to talk about the AL East, which has really become quite a gauntlet. I think the Orioles are the best team in the American League East. The Yankees came in with the best odds to win the division. Of course, they lose Garrett Cole. He's expected to make a return at some point in the summer months here. But I think the Orioles have the depth to withstand the summer. And I think when you look at their lineup right now, they're starting Jackson Holliday almost every day. He hasn't hit yet. I fully expect Holliday to figure it out. He's too good of a prospect to not bet on him. And did too much damage at AAA to not see him figure this out. So they're getting nothing from him. They're getting small breakouts from guys like Jordan Westberg and Colton Cowser, who aren't as top-end prospects as Gunnar Henderson was or as Adley Rutschman, but they're so young that I think the projection systems almost struggle to keep up with the small improvements that these young guys make as they progress through and get more major league reps. And so with Rutschman, that gives them such a high floor at catcher. They're getting the MVP potential breakout from Gunnar Henderson, and then they're getting the mini breakouts at the bottom of their lineup to kind of propel them forward. Baltimore is also interesting because their bullpen is a little shaky, but they have so many trade chips they can use at the deadline. If they want to go get another starter, if they want to go get a reliever, like a high-end reliever, they can do that. Whereas, the Yankees kind of emptied the farm a bit more in the summer in the winter in the Juan Soto trade. So they don't have as many buttons they can pull or push rather. Whereas the Orioles, I think, have the most depth to win this division over 162. And I think Baltimore at 2-1 to win it is interesting. I'm still buying Tampa. Got to wait to see what their pitching looks like in a couple months because they're getting guys back. I'm selling Toronto. Their offense has not turned it around. And Boston, I'm more holding on Boston because their rotation I think is real, but they have so many injuries in their lineups right now. It's rough. Casas is going to be out for a while. Yoshida's not playing every day. Devers just came back. So a lot of uncertainty with Boston, but ultimately I think the Orioles are the class of the East.
Wow. And the Yankees just a half game up on Baltimore in the division currently. Man, those were 4 fantastic takeaways, Anthony. Let's end on a pick for tonight.
I'm going to take the Nationals first 5 and money line. The market has come down a little bit here, but I still like the Nationals at plus 155, plus 160. I'm a little concerned about Yoshinobu Yamamoto, $250 million man the Dodgers signed in the offseason, 25 years old. Really impressive splitter and curveball. Had great numbers in Japan, looked good in the World Baseball Classic. He comes to the majors. His fastball is not very good. And I said this on Friday's show. We bet the Mets against him. We cashed. I'm betting the Nationals against him now. Opponents are slugging 710 against his fastball. It has an 86 stuff plus, which is below average, well below average. You compare that to Mackenzie Gore for Washington, the starter tonight. Gore has the career best strikeout rate, career best walk rate. His fastball velocity is up. The underlying metrics love his fastball, and you need that to get through this Dodgers lineup. So I like the Nationals as a home dog tonight. I think they're going to be competitive. And one of the more underrated aspects of the Nationals right now, their bullpen for the second straight year is pretty good and projects pretty well, which is a huge key if Gore is not able to go more than 5 or 6 innings, which is pretty likely.
So Nats perhaps underrated, Yamamoto maybe a little overrated right now. Nats looking to avoid the sweep by the Dodgers. Anthony Dabbundo, thanks so much for filling us in on all things baseball.
Thanks for having me.
Remember, any picks we give out here on the show, like the one you just heard from Anthony, you can easily reference by following Green Dot Daily in the Action app. We keep track so you don't have to. And that's going to do it for Green Dot Daily. I'm Maria Marino. Thank you for watching. The show is back tomorrow at 3 Eastern on the Action app and YouTube channel. Have a good one, everyone.